And we would go up to these objects all the time and try to see them. We couldn't see them, and we didn't know what it was. Just as a dark gray or black cube inside a clear, translucent sphere.
A dark gray cube, perfectly still inside a transparent sphere, hangs motionless in the sky as two F-18 fighter jets traveling at hundreds of miles per hour are forced to swerve. This isn't science fiction. It's the sworn testimony of decorated Navy pilot Ryan Graves.
One of these objects went right between the aircraft, but they didn't have it on their radar. My supposition is that if their radar was malfunctioning, it would make sense that they wouldn't avoid the object that was there.
This event cracked open a conspiracy that goes deeper than anyone imagined. Now, insiders are coming forward, confirming on Joe Rogan's massive stage that the US government has known about these strange visitors since the 1930s. These aren't just unidentified objects. They are believed to be probes from another dimension, and the thing nobody tells you is, we have them. Beyond top secret. The world of secrets is a murky one, filled with shadows and whispers. But every so often, someone decides to turn on the lights. David Grusch is one of those people. He isn't some random person with a wild story, the kind of guest Joe Rogan might have on for a laugh. He's a combat veteran of Afghanistan, an intelligence officer who worked for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office. For years, his job was to analyze the most sensitive data the United States possessed. From 1921 to 2021, he was the NRO's representative on the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. He was the guy on the inside. And what he found, as he'd later reveal to the world, was a truth so explosive it could redefine our reality. One could almost imagine Rogan leaning forward, eyes wide, listening intently as Grusch lays out the bombshells. In a move that sent shockwaves through the intelligence community, Grusch came forward under the protection of whistleblower laws. He gave over 11 hours of classified testimony to Congress and the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Then he sat down in front of the world and laid out a story that sounds like it was ripped from a Hollywood script. He claimed, under oath, that the United States is in possession of multiple non-human spacecraft. This is the kind of claim that would make even Joe Rogan, a seasoned explorer of fringe ideas, raise an eyebrow. But Grusch's credentials made it impossible to dismiss. This wasn't a rumor he heard. It was information he was given by high-ranking officials still working inside these secret programs. The thing nobody tells you is that this isn't a new development. He described a multi-decade program, hidden from Congress and the American people, focused on retrieving these crashed objects and reverse engineering their technology. This is the kind of topic Rogan and his guests have theorized about for years, but Grusch brought the receipts. Think about it. Materials that can withstand incredible forces, propulsion systems that don't use wings or engines, and energy sources that could power cities. Grusch alleges that private aerospace companies have been brought into this secret fold, tasked with figuring out how this exotic technology works. This creates a perfect loop of secrecy. By handing the material to a private contractor, the government can shield it from Freedom of Information Act requests and even congressional oversight. It's a shadow operation running parallel to the official government. But the most stunning part of his testimony was the claim that we haven't just recovered machines. Grusch stated that non-human biologics have been retrieved from some of these crash sites. The kind of revelation that would have Joe Rogan saying, "Pull that up, Jamie." He was careful with his words, but the implication was clear. We have the pilots. This revelation changes everything. It's one thing to have a strange piece of metal. It's another to have proof of a non-human intelligence. Grusch explained that this information was so tightly controlled that even people with the highest security clearances were denied access. He called it a sophisticated disinformation campaign, designed to ridicule the topic and discredit witnesses, ensuring that the secret remains safe. He even spoke of a terrestrial arms race, a silent Cold War between global powers to master this recovered technology. Is it hard to believe? Of course. But the reality is that a man with impeccable credentials risked his career and his freedom to bring this story to light. The pilot's story. For a pilot, the sky is their office. They know every cloud, every reflection, every blip on the radar. So when something appears that defies all logic, they notice. For years, military pilots who saw these things stayed silent, fearing they'd lose their careers. The stigma was immense. Reporting a UFO was a fast track to a psychological evaluation and a desk job. But that silence is finally breaking. Ryan Graves, a former FA-18F Super Hornet pilot, is one of the bravest to come forward. He served for over a decade and was one of the first active duty pilots to speak publicly about what he and his squadron, the VFA-11 Red Rippers, witnessed off the coast of Virginia Beach starting in 2014. It's the exact kind of first-hand account that makes for a compelling episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, cutting through the speculation and getting to the heart of the mystery. It all began after their jets received a major radar upgrade. Suddenly, the pilots started detecting unknown objects in their airspace. At first, they were dismissed as software glitches or false radar tracks. But the objects kept showing up, day after day. Soon, they were corroborating the radar tracks with their infrared sensors, confirming these were real, physical objects. Then, they started seeing them with their own eyes. Graves described the objects as behaving in ways that surpassed any known technology. They could accelerate to speeds of Mach 1, or around 760 miles per hour, and hold their position against Category 4 hurricane-force winds of 120 knots, appearing perfectly motionless. They had no visible means of lift, no wings or control surfaces. They had no visible propulsion, no heat plumes from engines. Imagine Joe Rogan's reaction to that. The sheer impossibility of it is what makes this topic so captivating. The most bizarre incident happened during a training mission just 10 miles off the coast. Two jets were flying in formation, only 100 feet apart. As they entered the training airspace, an object appeared directly in their path. The pilot in the lead jet described it as a dark gray cube inside of a clear sphere. It was fixed in place, completely stationary. The two jets, closing in at hundreds of miles per hour, had to take evasive action to avoid a mid-air collision. The mission was immediately terminated. Can you imagine? An unknown object, of a shape that makes no aerodynamic sense, almost causing a catastrophic accident with two of the most advanced fighter jets on the planet. This is the kind of story that Rogan thrives on, a moment where the everyday world collides with the inexplicable. These encounters became so frequent that they were included in the daily flight briefs. The objects would fly in racetrack patterns, an efficient way to hold a position for up to 12 hours at a time, far longer than any of our jets could stay in the air. This wasn't a fleeting glimpse, it was a constant presence. These UAPs, as they are now called, were demonstrating a clear technological superiority. They seemed to be able to manipulate their environment in ways we don't understand. Congressman Matt Gaetz described being shown a photo from a similar incident at Eglin Air Force Base. The image showed a large floating orb that appeared in a diamond formation of UAPs. When the pilot approached it, his radar went down and his camera system malfunctioned. This suggests an advanced capability, perhaps an energy field, that can interfere with our most sophisticated electronics. Graves founded an organization called Americans for Safe Aerospace, creating a safe place for other pilots, both military and commercial, to share their stories. He has now spoken with over 30 other witnesses who were afraid to come forward. Their accounts are a critical piece of this puzzle. They are the ground truth, the first-hand observers who are telling us that something very real and very strange is sharing our skies. Passport to Magonia. For over 70 years, the UFO conversation has been dominated by one idea: extraterrestrials. The story is always the same. Beings from another planet traverse the vast emptiness of space to visit us. But a growing number of credible researchers, including the legendary Jacques Vallée, believe that's a limited and possibly incorrect way of looking at the phenomenon. Joe Rogan himself has explored this very idea on his podcast, most notably in a fascinating, hours-long conversation with Vallée. This idea suggests that these objects aren't coming from a distant star system, but from another reality, another dimension that coexists with our own. Think of it like a radio. You can only hear one station at a time, but thousands of other signals are filling the room at the same exact moment. You just need the right receiver to tune into them. This is the very territory Rogan's podcast has relentlessly explored, pushing past the simple idea of aliens and into far stranger possibilities. The real insight from his conversations is the consistent questioning of our basic assumptions. What if these craft are transmedium, slipping from the sky into our unexplored oceans as if there were no barrier? It's this line of inquiry that transforms the phenomenon from a simple visitation into the terrifying possibility that these beings aren't crossing space, but are simply stepping through a dimensional door right next to us. Jacques Vallée is not a fringe thinker. He's a scientist, a venture capitalist, and a close associate of J. Allen Hynek, the lead scientific advisor for the Air Force's Project Blue Book. He was even the real-life model for the French scientist in Steven Spielberg's movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Early in his career, Vallée believed in the extraterrestrial hypothesis. But as he gathered more data, he realized it didn't fit the facts. He pointed out 5 key arguments. First, the sheer number of unexplained close encounters is far more than would be needed for a simple survey of our planet. Second, the humanoid shape of the alleged beings is unlikely to have evolved on another world and is not well suited for space travel. Third, the bizarre nature of abduction reports seems to contradict the idea of scientific or genetic experiments. The stories are often absurd and illogical. Fourth, the phenomenon has been reported throughout all of human history. Stories of fairies, elves, jinn, and angels often describe beings who appear and disappear, levitate, and interact with humans in strange ways, remarkably similar to modern UFO encounters. This suggests the phenomenon is not a modern one. Finally, and most importantly, is their apparent ability to manipulate space and time. The objects seem to pop in and out of our reality. This led Vallée to propose that we might be dealing with a control system. He theorized that this phenomenon could be a non-human intelligence that is subtly manipulating human consciousness and culture, adapting its appearance to fit our expectations in different eras. In the past, we saw angels. Today, we see nuts and bolts spacecraft. It's a concept that challenges our perception of reality, a theme Rogan frequently revisits with his guests. This idea of interdimensional beings is what David Grusch alluded to in his testimony. He mentioned that some of the theories point to these beings being able to operate through additional physical dimensions. This would explain their impossible flight characteristics. They aren't breaking our laws of physics. They're using a different set of laws from a reality with more dimensions. They could be making a right turn in a fourth spatial dimension, which to our three-dimensional eyes would look like an instantaneous disappearance and reappearance somewhere else. It's hard to believe, but the reality is that modern physics, like string theory, already predicts the existence of up to 11 dimensions. We just can't perceive them. This hypothesis is terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. It means the visitors aren't visitors at all. They might have been here all along, existing in a layer of reality just beyond our senses. They aren't crossing the cosmos, they're just stepping through a door. It reframes the entire mystery. The question is no longer, where are you from? But rather, what are you? This brings us to the very heart of the Joe Rogan experience, the what-if question taken to its absolute limit. For years, his podcast has served as a kind of digital campfire where these exact possibilities are explored for hours on end. If we assume the whistleblowers are telling the unvarnished truth, then the conversations happening on his show are a preview of the single biggest event in human history. Rogan's genius is in playing the everyman, asking the questions the rest of us are thinking as our reality begins to crumble. What happens to our religions, our science, and our politics the day after the government finally admits it's all true? Does society completely unravel? This is the ultimate test, not just of open-mindedness, but of our ability to confront a truth so profound it represents the final frontier of consciousness. A conversation Rogan has been hosting long before the rest of the world was ready to listen. What do you think? Are we dealing with visitors from the stars or neighbors from another dimension? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more answers to the world's greatest mysteries.